Down with Ohio State. It's a know-nothing party school. That's the fun lyrics of this Ohio State rouser across the field is what it's really called. The Ohio State University football head coach Jim Tressel resigned from the program. The Buckeyes were 9-1 this last season, 6-0 against Michigan State during his tenure, and he beat up Michigan. 9-1 is the record against Michigan he's had, including 7 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. So he had been suspended for the first 5 games of the year, but there was a Sports Illustrated article that just came out this week that some say pushed him right over the edge, and that was that. Rich Kincaid, sports writer, who you can find at everybodywantstoreadmyblog.com. He was the immediate past president of the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association, too, and he's on the other end of our line. A dedicated Sparty, by the way. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Well,
who had the higher winning percentage, Jim Tressel or Woody Hayes?
Jim Tressel.
Yes, he did. 828 to 761 for Woody Hayes. So Ohio State has shocked everybody, I think, by hiring the most successful coach in their history.
But he leaves in a cloud of shame.
Oh, he does indeed. He does indeed. You know, there's an inner. I don't know why people don't follow history, Michael Patrick. Every crime that was committed in Watergate had occurred within 6 days of the break-in. All of the perjury, all of the covering up, and everything else. And it took another couple of years before everything came to light. And Richard Nixon had to resign, and many of his cohorts went to prison. If at the time that it all occurred, Nixon had simply said, you guys got to walk the plank, and he'd come clean about everything, Watergate probably wouldn't be remembered by anyone. And that's the same case here. If Jim Tressel, back in April, had found out that his players were selling uniforms and memorabilia for walking around money, which is a separate issue unto itself. Players, remember, they can't get jobs when they're under scholarship. If he had come clean at the time, he'd probably still be Ohio State football coach today. It was the lying and the covering up that cost him his job, because he said in December, I just heard about this and yada yada, and then emails came out that proved conclusively that he had known 5 or 6 months earlier that this was going on, and then that he didn't do anything about it.
Not only that, I mean, he even let them play in the bowl game. I mean, he made a deal with the devil. You guys can play in the bowl game, but you have to sit out the first, 4 games is it of this season or something? 5 games?
4 or 5 in some cases, yeah. And I'm not sure how much that was Jim Tressel and how much of that was pressure from the bowl itself. Remember, at the time, it was a Sugar Bowl, wasn't it? The Sugar Bowl officials were saying, look, we sold a lot of tickets because people were expecting to see your top players, so you really need to have them out there. But yeah, that definitely left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. But the one thing, my takeaway from this, the one thing I'm going to remember about this whole affair is when Tressel, being questioned about why didn't you do something, said, I didn't know who to call. Yeah. Now, every university has got a compliance officer, somebody whose sole job it is to make sure that your athletic programs are in compliance, why they call it compliance officer, in compliance with NCAA rules and regulations. And at the first whiff of trouble, that's the person you get on the phone to. And for Jim Tressel to say, I didn't know who to call, it just didn't sound good.
Apparently this Sports Illustrated story is going to talk about lots of transgressions in his career, not only at Ohio State, but before that, too, and that there are all kinds of players coming out of the woodwork now telling their story, and maybe that's what pushed him over the edge here?
It's possible. You wonder sometimes about a coach like Jim Tressel, whose career track took him from Youngstown State right to Ohio State, and Ohio State, Youngstown State, I should say, is a cradle of coaches. There's a lot of guys that go on to coach at big-time Division I programs who go through Youngstown State. Well, the reason they have success at Youngstown State, well, you can't be a good coach without good players. So they're doing something. And I'm not saying anything's wrong, but, the Sports Illustrated story, I suggest, is going to say they're doing something wrong. But a lot of good football players go to Youngstown State, which in my mind's eye is a rather unlikely destination. But it's proven to be one of those paths where you go and you have success. Tressel was making, and you know me, I'm a bleeding heart liberal, Michael Patrick. I actually feel badly for Jim Tressel and all of this. Here's a guy, top of his profession, making $3.7 million a year, and to have to sit down and write a 7-sentence resignation and walk away from all of that when you're in the prime of your life at 58 years old. I mean, that is, in some respects, to me, that's just heartbreaking. And the interim coach who's going to replace him is making $257,000 a year.
Wow, no wonder they're going to keep him all year.
Exactly, yeah. They made that announcement that the interim coach, who was going to fill in for 5 games while Tressel was going to be suspended, his name is Luke Fickell, he will instead stay on for the entirety of next season. And the athletic director at Ohio State, Gene Smith, says that they will not begin searching for a new full-time replacement coach for Tressel until the end of the upcoming season. That is to say, the end of the 2011 into the 2012 bowl season, college football season.
Here's the part I don't believe. Ohio State says they're not going to start a national search until after the season. That can't possibly be true, can it?
Well, they can say it all they want, but I'm guessing they're getting resumes today. One thing that struck me, too, I was wondering why they would make an announcement like this on Memorial Day. And, in politics, if you've got bad news to deliver, you tend to do what's called a news dump on a Friday because nobody reads the papers on Saturday. But I wonder if there just wasn't a little part of this just to kind of shaft the reporters and the media in Ohio. Hey, you guys all thought you had Memorial Day off. Well, I'll tell you what, you sure don't have Memorial Day off anymore. So I was just curious why they would make that announcement on a Memorial Day.
Mark D'Antonio's name will be included, I think, amongst those who could replace Jim Tressel, don't you think?
Michael Patrick, I'm sorry, my phone inexplicably began beeping.
Sure, it's ringing off the hook. Mark D'Antonio's name will be among those mentioned as possible replacements, won't it?
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Yeah, absolutely. I no question about that. And I was talking to Amanda about this yesterday. Can you name a Big Ten coach other than Hoke down at Michigan, perhaps, because he professes to hate Ohio State so much, even though he's from Ohio? But can you name a Big Ten coach that would trade to become a coach at Ohio State? That's a premier program, always a national power, and probably the money's better.
It'll be a long story and unfolding over months and months and months. Find Rich Kincaid at everybodywantstoreadmyblog.com and find us right here on the radio station you're listening to, and also on Fox 47. It's Michael Patrick Shields.